I still remember the exact moment the wedding invitations went out. It was a crisp afternoon, the kind where the sky looked almost too blue, and the air carried a chill that felt sharper than usual. My phone buzzed nonstop with family group messages, photos of envelopes, fancy calligraphy, gold-trimmed paper that screamed importance. Everyone was buzzing with excitement. Aunts shared screenshots of their invitations, and cousins posed with theirs as though they had been invited to the royal palace. Everyone seemed to have one, everyone, except me. At first I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe mine got lost in the mail. Perhaps the postman accidentally delivered it to a neighbor. I told myself not to panic, not to overthink. But deep inside, an uneasy heaviness started to grow. I remember checking the mailbox 3 times that day, waiting for an envelope with my name in glossy script. Nothing came. When the evening fell and the streets outside grew quiet, I walked back into my apartment, trying to convince myself that it was still too soon to worry. After all, my parents had my address, and my sister had bragged for months about how she wanted a wedding where everyone important would be there. I was her only sister. Surely that meant me too, but doubt is a cruel whisperer. By the next day, the silence became unbearable. My cousins sent selfies holding up their invitations, laughing, teasing one another about what they would wear. My aunt messaged me directly. "So what are you planning to wear, honey? You'll look gorgeous at your sister's wedding." I froze, unable to type a response. What was I supposed to say? I haven't been invited? I'm the one person they decided to leave out. My hands trembled and I locked my phone, shoving it deep into my pocket. That evening I couldn't take it anymore. I called my mother. She answered quickly, her voice sweet but cautious, as if she already knew what was coming. "Mom," I said slowly, "I haven't gotten an invitation. Did something happen? Did mine get lost?" There was a pause, the kind that feels like an eternity stretched thin. Then with a tired sigh, she said words that I'll never forget. "You shouldn't come, sweetheart. We don't want any drama at your sister's big day." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. My chest tightened and my mouth went dry. "Drama? What drama?" I managed to whisper. "I'm her sister. Why wouldn't I be there?" Her tone hardened, a familiar edge I had known since childhood. "You know how things are between you two. She doesn't want tension. We just want the day to be about her happiness, nothing else. Please understand, it's for the best. For the best." That phrase burned into my ears like acid. I sat there, clutching the phone, unable to believe what I was hearing. I wasn't the one who constantly craved the spotlight. I wasn't the one who had always pitted us against each other, who made sure to shine while making me look small. That was my sister. She was the golden child, the star who could do no wrong. And now, even on the most important day of her life, I was being told I didn't belong. I hung up, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't cry immediately. Instead, I sat in silence, staring at the wall as though it held all the answers. The words replayed over and over in my head. You shouldn't come, as if I were a problem to be avoided. As if I were some kind of shameful shadow they needed to erase. Later that night, I confronted my father. I drove to their house, the place that once felt like home but now felt like a museum of memories I wasn't welcome to touch. He was in the living room, watching the news, his glasses slipping down the bridge of his nose. I asked him directly, my voice trembling but firm. "Dad, is it true? Am I not invited to my own sister's wedding?" He looked at me for only a moment before his gaze slid away. His jaw tightened. He muttered softly, almost to himself. "It's for the best." "For the best?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "How can excluding your daughter from her own sister's wedding be for the best? What did I do to deserve this?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the television, pretending to be absorbed in the muted headlines. It was easier for him to ignore me than face the truth of what they were doing. In that silence, I felt something inside me shatter. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling until the shadows blurred into tears. Sleep wouldn't come. Every memory from childhood resurfaced. The times I was overlooked, the times my achievements were dismissed, the endless comparisons to my sister. I remembered the way relatives would gush over her grades, her beauty, her charm, while patting me on the head as if I were the dull, unwanted sibling. I had tried so hard to carve out an identity, to prove I was worth something too. Yet no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. Now, here it was again, the final proof of my place in the family hierarchy. I was the outsider. The embarrassment, the one better left unseen. My sister got the dress, the flowers, the applause, and the blessing. I got silence, exclusion, and a cruel reminder that in my parents' eyes, I would never be enough. The days that followed were torture. Social media became a battlefield I couldn't escape. Photos of my sister flooded my feed. Her trying on wedding gowns, smiling with friends at bridal showers, showing off her engagement ring in every possible angle. Relatives tagged me in group posts, assuming I was just as thrilled. Each notification was like a dagger, reminding me of what I was denied. I began to avoid opening my phone altogether, terrified of the smiling reminders of my rejection. When I ran into family friends at the grocery store, they asked with excitement, "So, what role are you playing in the wedding? Maid of honor, right?" I forced a smile, my stomach twisting into knots, and lied. "Oh, nothing special. Just happy for her." The words tasted bitter. Every time I smiled, it felt like glass was cutting my throat. At night, my thoughts turned darker. What was wrong with me? Was I truly so unworthy of love and belonging that even my own family would rather erase me from their happiness? I remembered how many times my mother had said, "Don't make a scene," whenever my sister and I got into an argument. How many times have I been blamed just for reacting to her cruelty? And now, this wedding was just another chapter in the same story. Their desire to silence me, to protect her image at the cost of my existence. The world moved on while I stood still, trapped in the invisible cage my family built around me. My friends tried to cheer me up, but even when they said, "You don't need them, you're better off," the ache inside me refused to fade. Because no matter how much I wanted to believe I was free of them, they were my family. Their rejection cut deeper than any wound I had ever known. On the eve of the wedding, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the empty invitation that never arrived. The city outside was alive. Cars honked, music played in distant bars, and laughter floated through the night air. But inside, it was just me, my tears, and the suffocating silence of absence. I thought about crashing the wedding, about showing up just to prove I had a right to be there. But what would that accomplish? A scene? More whispers about how I was the difficult daughter? I imagined my mother's cold eyes, my father's silence, my sister's triumphant smirk. No. They had already written the script where I was cast out. To force my way in would only give them the satisfaction of saying, "See? We told you she'd ruin it." Instead, I curled up on my couch and let myself cry until the sobs left me empty. The hurt was unbearable, but beneath it, something else began to flicker, a spark of resolve. If they could erase me so easily, maybe it was time I erased myself from their story altogether. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I knew one thing for certain. My family had made their choice. And now it was my turn to make mine. The morning of the wedding arrived with a strange heaviness in the air, like the world itself knew what the day meant for me. I woke before dawn, though I hadn't truly slept. My eyes burned from hours of restless tossing, replaying my parents' words again and again in my head. "You shouldn't come." The phrase had settled into my chest like a stone, pressing down with every breath I took. I walked to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see the street below. The sky was still gray, with the first hints of orange stretching along the horizon. Birds sang, their morning chorus blissfully unaware of my turmoil. For a fleeting second, I wondered if I was imagining it all. Maybe the phone call had been a nightmare. Maybe my father's silence had been a misunderstanding. Maybe, just maybe, there would be an invitation in my mailbox today, and all of this hurt would vanish like fog under the sun. But deep down, I already knew better. By mid-morning, the neighborhood stirred awake. Cars lined the driveways of my parents' house across town, their headlights flashing as relatives unloaded gifts wrapped in shimmering paper. Women in elegant dresses stepped out, adjusting their shawls against the breeze, while men straightened their ties. The faint hum of music drifted toward me, carried by the wind, mingled with bursts of laughter. It was the sound of celebration, the kind I had always imagined being part of, but now I could only watch from afar. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up reluctantly, already dreading what I would see. The screen lit up with notifications. Instagram posts, tagged photos, Facebook stories. There she was, my sister, in a lace gown that sparkled under the morning light, her veil cascading down like a waterfall of ivory. She was surrounded by friends and cousins, all smiling, all basking in her joy. My chest tightened as I scrolled, each picture another reminder that I was invisible to them, deliberately cut out of a memory that would be cherished for years. I could have endured being tucked in the back row, anonymous and forgotten. I could have endured being ignored, sitting quietly while everyone praised her. What I couldn't endure was this, being erased, as if I didn't exist at all. Something inside me snapped then, sharp and final. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was a hollowing out, a realization that I no longer had a place in the family I had fought so hard to belong to. If they could celebrate without me today, they could live without me tomorrow. I moved through my apartment in a daze, grabbing a small bag from the closet. I didn't think about what I was doing, only that I needed to move, to escape before the grief swallowed me whole. I tossed in a few clothes, jeans, sweaters, a jacket, barely caring if they matched. My wallet, keys, and phone went in next. At the last second, I reached for my notebook, the one where I had scribbled my thoughts during countless lonely nights. That notebook had always been my safe place, the only space where my voice wasn't drowned out by my sister's. When I zipped the bag shut, a strange calmness settled over me. It wasn't relief, but it was something close, a quiet resignation that there was nothing left for me here. I stood in the doorway of my apartment, staring at the life I was leaving behind. The couch where I had cried myself to sleep. The bookshelf was crammed with novels I'd used as escape routes. The walls that had absorbed all my whispered prayers for love and acceptance. It felt surreal, as though I were stepping out of one existence and into another. I locked the door, slid the key into my pocket, and walked down the hall without looking back. The streets were already bustling. Traffic crawled along, impatient drivers honking at one another. Families strolled on sidewalks, children tugging at balloons, vendors selling flowers from carts. Life carried on, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. For a moment, I felt like a ghost moving among the living, unseen and untethered. I boarded the first bus that came, not even checking where it was headed. I just needed to go. The engine roared to life, and as the city blurred past the window, I felt the weight of my decision settle in. My parents didn't know I was leaving. My sister didn't care. None of them would notice my absence. Not today, when the spotlight was firmly fixed on her. I thought about sending a message, some bitter text that would slice through their celebration. Something like, "Don't worry, you got what you wanted. I'm gone." But as my fingers hovered over the keyboard, I stopped. Why give them that satisfaction? Why let them know they had broken me? No, silence would be my answer. They had erased me from the wedding. I would erase myself from their lives. The bus rattled over potholes, rocking me back and forth. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, watching strangers outside go about their lives. I wondered if anyone else on this bus had ever been told by their own family that they weren't wanted. I wondered if they, too, had felt the sting of being cut out of joy. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. Eventually, the bus stopped at a terminal in another part of the city. I stepped off, clutching my bag tightly, my legs trembling from both exhaustion and adrenaline. I didn't know this neighborhood. That was the point. I wanted to disappear into a place where no one knew my name, where I wasn't defined as the forgotten sister. I found a cheap motel tucked between a diner and a laundromat. The sign flickered, buzzing faintly in the daylight. The clerk barely looked at me when I paid for a room, sliding a key across the counter without a word. The room itself was small, dimly lit, with peeling wallpaper and a faint smell of bleach. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was far away from them. I sat on the bed, staring at the bag I had packed so hastily. My phone buzzed again. More pictures, more posts, more joy that didn't include me. I turned it off, letting the silence envelop me. For the first time, I felt the true weight of what I had done. I had disappeared. I wasn't just skipping a wedding. I was stepping out of an entire life. The hours dragged. I imagined the ceremony unfolding, the vows being spoken, the applause echoing through the hall. I pictured my parents smiling, proud, their arms linked with my sister as though she were their only child. I wondered if anyone asked where I was, or if my absence was never mentioned at all. Tears finally came, hot and relentless. They soaked my pillow as I lay curled on the bed, clutching my notebook to my chest. I scribbled words furiously, trying to capture the ache inside me before it consumed me completely. I am gone. I am not theirs anymore. I belong to no one but myself. By nightfall, the world outside the motel room grew quiet. I imagined the wedding had ended, the guests gone home, the laughter fading into the night. I imagined my parents dancing, my sister beaming, while I lay in the dark, invisible and forgotten. But even in the silence, a strange clarity began to form. Maybe disappearing wasn't the end of me. Maybe it was the beginning. If my family could cut me out so easily, then perhaps I could cut myself free too. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't chasing their affection. I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. I was alone, yes. But in that loneliness, there was also power. I whispered into the darkness, my voice steady despite the tears. They told me not to come. So I left, and I'm never going back. The first week after the wedding felt like floating in limbo, like I was suspended in some strange, unfamiliar space where everything I knew had been stripped away. The motel room where I hid was nothing more than 4 walls, a bed with stiff sheets, and a lamp that buzzed faintly whenever it was turned on. Yet, inside those walls, I was safe. Safe from the judgmental stares, from my mother's clipped tone, from my father's silence, from my sister's ever-present smirk. But safety is not the same as comfort. At night, loneliness pressed against me like a heavy blanket I couldn't shake off. I missed the familiar hum of my parents' house, even if that house had always been a place of favoritism and exclusion. I missed hearing the creak of the stairs I'd grown up on, the smell of my mother's cooking wafting through the halls, the sound of laughter, even if it wasn't meant for me. There were moments when I almost reached for my phone to call them, to beg them to take me back, to tell them I would do anything just to belong again. But every time, my pride stopped me. The truth was, there was nothing to go back to. They had made their choice clear. They didn't want me, and if they didn't want me, why should I waste another ounce of my soul begging for scraps of their love? So I moved on. After a week, I packed my bag again and left the motel behind. I took a train to a city 2 hours away, a place where the streets were lined with coffee shops, bookstores, and strangers who didn't know my story. For the first time, I felt the faint stirrings of possibility. No one here saw me as the forgotten daughter or the sister who wasn't good enough. I was just a face in the crowd, and that anonymity felt like freedom. I rented a small studio apartment above a bakery. The place was modest, cracked tiles in the bathroom, peeling paint in the kitchen. But it had 2 big windows that let in the sunlight every morning, and the smell of fresh bread drifted up the stairs like a daily blessing. It was mine. Not my parents', not my sister's, just mine. Those first months were hard. Money was tight, and I picked up a job as a cashier at a local bookstore. The pay wasn't much, but being surrounded by shelves of stories gave me comfort. During slow hours, I would flip through novels, losing myself in worlds where people overcame impossible odds, where characters rose from betrayal and built new lives. Each story reminded me that reinvention was possible, that maybe, just maybe, I could write a new chapter for myself too. Evenings were the loneliest. I'd sit at the tiny desk in my apartment, notebook open, pen in hand, pouring out everything I had bottled up for years. I wrote about my sister's cruelty, about my parents' blind favoritism, about the ache of invisibility that had shadowed me since childhood. The more I wrote, the lighter I felt. Words became my therapy, each sentence a thread stitching back together the pieces of myself I thought were gone forever. Sometimes I would walk through the park a few blocks away, watching couples stroll hand in hand, children chase pigeons, and artists sketch on benches. For once I wasn't comparing myself to anyone. I wasn't thinking about what my sister would say or how my parents would judge me. I was simply there, existing, breathing, living. Slowly, I began to meet people. The woman who owned the bakery downstairs, Mrs. Alvarez, often slipped me extra pastries when I came down to buy coffee. One day, she invited me to sit with her at a corner table. We talked about nothing and everything: her late husband, my love of books, the city's best hidden cafes. She didn't know my past, and I didn't tell her. To her, I wasn't the daughter who wasn't invited. I was just a young woman finding her way. That felt refreshing. At the bookstore, I grew close to a coworker named Rachel. She was quirky, full of laughter, with a knack for making even the dullest shifts entertaining. She never pried into my past, but she listened when I wanted to share pieces of myself. For the first time in years, I had a friend who saw me for who I was, not who I wasn't. The months slipped by. Seasons changed. Leaves fell and painted the streets gold. Then winter came, crisp and biting, and I found myself standing in my apartment one evening, scrolling through social media again. A picture of my sister's wedding popped up on the screen. She looked radiant in her gown, her smile wide, her husband gazing at her like she was the only person in the world. For a moment, I froze, waiting for the familiar sting of jealousy, the familiar ache of rejection. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt nothing. Or maybe it was something deeper than nothing. It was freedom. They thought they had punished me by shutting me out, but in truth, they had freed me. Their rejection had forced me to step out of their shadow, to build a life where my worth wasn't constantly questioned, where I wasn't begging to be noticed. I set my phone down and looked around my little apartment. The notebook on the desk filled with pages of my voice, the stack of books waiting to be read, the plant on the windowsill that Rachel had given me, its leaves stretching toward the light. These small things might not have meant much to anyone else, but to me, they meant everything. They were proof that I was creating a life on my own terms. That night, I whispered to myself, I walked away for good. And I'm never going back. And I meant it. In the weeks that followed, I leaned fully into my new beginning. I signed up for a creative writing class at the community center, something I had always dreamed of but never dared to do. Each week, I shared pieces of my writing with strangers who clapped, encouraged, and offered kind critiques. For once, my voice wasn't silenced. It was celebrated. I even began to dream bigger. Maybe I could turn my notebook scribbles into a book someday. Maybe my story, filled with rejection and resilience, could help someone else who felt forgotten by the people who should have loved them most. The more I wrote, the more I realized that my family's rejection hadn't destroyed me. It had revealed me. It had stripped away the illusion that I needed their approval to have worth. It had pushed me into a world where I could finally see myself clearly. One evening, I sat on a park bench as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rachel sat beside me, laughing about something that had happened at work. Mrs. Alvarez walked by, waving with a smile. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I had never truly felt before. I felt like I belonged, not because of blood, not because of obligation, but because I had chosen my place, chosen my people, chosen myself. And that was the beginning of everything.